Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We are here today again with a very welcome guest, Chaim Noll, that is connecting directly from Israel. And the topic of our conversation will be today quite generic. About regarding updates from Israel in the mid of all the news that keep coming daily about the conflict, about the state, but also regarding the overall situation. First of
Yeah,
all, thank you, Aim, for accepting the invitation. How are you doing?
I'm well. So uh, we stood our ground in the war against Iran, and now it's time to relax a little.
Uh, but as you know, there are very conflicting reporting in the mainstream news in America or in Europe regarding this conflict. And I saw your excellent article on the Zurich. I mean, it's a German name, the Zurich newspaper, and also your interview for the German channel Sat 3, and where you were also discussing these points, like they were asking you how is the situation in Israel. Like Israel, there would be some political resistance to what has been done. What is your? Can you also offer your take on this for our viewers?
Yeah, the government is weak, but it's not because of the war. The war is the most popular thing Netanyahu does at the moment, but his coalition is um, fragile because of the ultra-orthodox parties he took in, and they want to, yeah, I must say, to blackmail him to get privileges for their young people that they have to go to the army. They will not be drafted. So they have to be drafted now because of the decision of the Supreme Court. But the question is how the government reacts to those who to the Dodge, the draft dodgers, and um, what the government can do to enforce laws, to speak, that also the ultra-orthodox young men have to go to the army. That's a weak point. If the government may be really in trouble now after the Ashkenazi um, ultra-Orthodox parties left it. We wait now today or tomorrow. The Sephardic ultra-Orthodox party will decide whether they also leave the government. So then Netanyahu has no majority anymore. But it doesn't mean automatically that the government has to step down. Netanyahu has to step down because it's possible that the ultra-Orthodox parties will block um, to dissolve the parliament. So the opposition needs the ultra-orthodox parties to dissolve the government. So it's possible that ultra-orthodox parties will let Netanyahu govern as a minority government without being uh, included. So they can tell their rabbis that they left the government, but in reality they keep it alive, not voting for dissolution of the parliament. So we don't know what. It's possible that Netanyahu will govern with a minority from now on, and we don't expect great changes for the next days.
Uh, is there a timetable for the end of the operations? I mean, because currently we keep talking about war with Iran,
Yeah,
but uh, this is not really the correct terminology, don't you think? Because I mean, there's been a state of hostility from Iran against Israel from the very beginning. There have been constant attacks, manipulations, creating militia like Hezbollah. I mean, a situation that no other country would ever tolerate, and a series of attacks from all sides, trying to also subvert the area. And if it's a war, it should have different forms. Also, I mean, the first thing is that why a state that it's so far from Israel as a war with a state where there are no borders, there is nothing, there is no connection, there are no element of contention. Because what are the contentions of Iranians, of the Iranian politics against Israel? What is the contention? That Israel exists. That's their problem.
I think there are points, two reasons for this warlike behaviors of the Iranian government since long. I mean, they have spent the last decade to build up a kind of yeah, Israel being surrounded by militias. They have financed from, so to speak, all neighboring countries that cost them billions of dollars. They invested all the money they had into that um, enterprise. Um, they get money from China. That's the problem. So we have generally two reasons why they do that. First is their ideology, their militant Muslim religious ideology, ideology that tries to get the hegemony among the Muslim countries here in the Middle East. They want to become the leader of Muslim countries in the Middle East, and to fulfill that role, they like to attack Israel as the enemy and a country that is incompatible with their idea of Islam. So the foundation of the state of Israel, territory that once has been marked, is against um, certain Islamic theory that ever place that has been Muslim can be something else afterwards. So they consider the country. Hello? What's
I
that?
can hear you. You're fine.
Yeah, I'm. You can see me.
Yeah, yeah, I can see and can hear.
I'm out of the. I have to
No, no, I
come
see. I
back.
see. Everything is good. Everything is good.
Okay. Okay. Um, so that's the first point, that they cannot accept Israel's existence um, from their militant Muslim perspective. And the other one is that they get paid for this. So we have in the background, unfortunately, China as an actor that keeps they keep themselves invisible, but in reality they act here in the Middle East, um, supporting the Iranian regime, and that will become more and more a problem here for Israel and also the Arab countries around, that we have um, to that we are in a situation again. I said to my wife today that it's strange that we always are in the hot spots of the confrontation of superpowers, as we have been in our youth living in Berlin when it was divided in the confrontation between the Americans and the Russians in the Cold War. But we are now in a similar situation here in Israel and in the hotspot of the upcoming confrontation between the United States and China.
But what do you think? It's the I mean the Chinese interest. It just strategic or economic. I mean, it is because they are interested in Iran's oil that they support Iran. Because otherwise, China has no cause whatsoever to be against Israel.
Yeah, that's the first point that they buy with a lot of money Iranian oil. So they are the main provider of Iranian financial means now, because they buy every year for billions of dollars oil from Iran. But they have another interest here in the Middle East, and this is the Chinese conception of a new Silk Road. So the Silk Belt, they called this. It was the idea to build a connection between China and Europe, crossing the Middle East. And there was Iran, the main fortress, so to speak, then going via Iraq and Syria to the Lebanon, and from there crossing the Mediterranean to Europe. There is a competition project to that that was introduced in 2022, I think, or 23, short before the war broke out, short before Hamas started the war here. That was the idea of a corridor between India and Europe, including Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Emirates and Israel. So that is the competition to the Chinese project. And it's clear that the Chinese imperialism, I call it like that, although they do everything to cover their imperialist intentions, but it's visible now, and the new Chinese leadership is different from those in the last decades. It's much more aggressive and much more imperialist in their intention. That they didn't like the idea of that India, Middle East, European corridor, as it was introduced, I think, at one of the international meetings of the G7 or one of these gremiums in 2023. And short after that, this Hamas attack on Israel started. And of course, you cannot deny that China is behind Iran, encouraging them to start provocations like that or wars. I think they have miscalculated. Iran was considered stronger than they are. That's also for China a disappointment to see that Iran was not, as they had hoped, capable to overcome Israel, or at least to withstand Israel. They didn't. So Israel has destroyed most of the structures they have built up during the last decades with all the money they got from China mostly. And now they have to start anew. So all in all, it was this enterprise was without luck, and Israel had a lot of had a hard time. I must say, we were here all the time, so I can tell you that it's hard for the country now, but we were successful, and this was not what the Iranian and the Chinese leaders calculated. They had hope for another outcome, of course, of the war.
So basically, but uh, I mean, it is a, series of geopolitical interests which can always be amended. The politics can change on this level, on the side of China, while from Iran, it's an ideological cause. And those are the most difficult to fight because ideology do not change. They stay as they are until their task is accomplished. And what is also quite telling and worrisome is the response of some of the European leadership to the destruction of the nuclear infrastructure of Iran from Israel. Like they are not touched by the problem. Like it would not. They try to hide that it's in their also in their interest that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, it's different. So the German chancellor, as you surely know, he was one of those who gave to understand their feeling of solidarity and that they know that Israel is doing that for the sake of the of Europe also. So when he said that Israel is doing the dirty work for the West now with that war against Iran, but there are other European countries that really try to damage Israel now, Israel's position, and to disturb what we do here. So it's different. All in all, the European Union, the EU, is, let's say, half-heartedly acting in solidarity with Israel now at the moment. So it's better than it has been before with the Gaza war, where Europe turned more and more against Israel. I think that most of the European governments understand that what we do here now, that we block the Iranian intentions to dominate the Middle East. That's what they want. And that's what the Chinese want because then with Iran, they could also dominate the Middle East. They had chosen Iran as their proxy, so to speak, and Iran has built its own proxies here surrounding Israel. So that's the system, so to speak. Um, I think most of the European governments know that this is not in their interest to allow Iran becoming the dominating country here in the power in the Middle East.
France included, Macron included. I mean.
So we are still connected or not?
Yes, yes, we are. I mean, I asked if you mean France included, Macron included, that understands that it's our in European interest what Israel is doing.
Yeah, I think most of the European governments understand that. I mean, there is a ongoing propaganda war against Israel in the United States and in Europe and so on. But it's not really the politics of the government. So these are other groups. The governments are weak in Europe. They cannot really control these people. They cannot control their own Muslim minorities in France or Belgium or Great Britain. So they are more or less are these. So the Israeli people consider them more or less hijacked by their or taking hostage by their Muslim minorities. And that's why they have to declare anti-Israeli positions that they in reality don't keep. So propaganda we have to face, and that is really, I must say, a problem and a nuisance. That is more from leftist groups and from the Muslim minorities in these countries, but it's not the position of the governments. They cannot afford to take that position. So of course they have to support Israel in that war. It's the only the possibility to when they look for their own security and future. They cannot allow that development that with Iran as a hegemonial power here in the Middle East.
Yeah, but this is a very worrisome scenario already by itself, because I mean, saying that the government is afraid to, to a point of a certain part of a minority in their own country, that they cannot express public open support for Israel, it's extremely worrisome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So the United States are the only Western country at the moment that, with under President Trump, openly supports Israel. So they deal with their Muslim minority obviously another way than the European countries do, and they can control it still. So it's a lot of noise at the universities and so on, but it's not a real danger in the United States. It's not to compare with the European countries like France, where they are going up to minorities of 8-10% by and by. Also Britain, Germany, uh, quickly growing because of their birth rate and the low birth rates of the European populations. Also, Italy, it's really astonishing that Italy has such a low birth rate. When we lived in Italy in the 90s, it was a country where they loved children. I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened in these countries that they have problems with the birth rate. And that's why the future is bleak with the own birth rate so low and the Muslim birth rate that high, so that you can foresee that the Muslim minority will become more and more influential in these countries. And that's their problem. We cannot solve it for them. We have to solve the problem we have here, that we have the Iranian imperialism and the Chinese backers directly on our door, so that we have to defend our borders against them. So that's a different situation, and there we can't listen to them anymore. So we know that in the crucial moment they will be in solidarity with Israel, and what they say we don't listen to that anymore.
But I have a further question to you regarding the Muslim population, because in Israel you have around 3 million, if I'm not mistaken, Muslims that are perfectly integrated, or I mean, a large part is perfectly integrated in the country and doesn't harbor those hate feelings for the state of Israel. Many Muslims also serve in the IDF, and so what do you do right that Europe or America is doing wrong?
I don't know. It's quite different here. So it's not that much as you said. So it's 1.8 million Muslims here in the country, with some other minorities. So all in all, the population has crossed the threshold to 10 millions and more. Of those, about 8 millions are Jewish, and or 7.89 or something nearly 8 million are Jewish, and 1.8 is Muslim, and then there are some Christian people, and we have other minorities still, the Druze and others. Yeah, what do they to integrate? We work on this project since long to integrate the Muslim population. It's not that easy, and there is a lot of problems. The Israeli government made a lot of mistakes. Also, we let them rule with Sharia law in their own places, in their own towns, and so on. We have a lot of criminality, inner Arab criminality, that is not connected with the Jewish population, but in these Arab towns, there is a lot of killings and so on, clan wars and infight, and what you always have in Muslim populations, I must say. It's a typical way of life of Muslim populations all over the Middle East. It starts again, for instance, in Syria now, that certain groups, that several religious groups start to fight each other. And that's the same here in parts of the Muslim population. I think the main point is that the state of Israel can attract them economically, and most of these people are interested in living like the Jewish people live, on a high living standard. I mean, there are certain standards they want to fulfill. When you see the young Muslim men in the shopping centers, they are dressed more fashionably and Western style than the Israeli people. So it's you see their strong intention to fit in, to be part of that Israeli society. I don't know what it is. I think it is the radiance of self confidence and strength that the Israeli society radiates, whereas the European societies seem to be confused and weak. They know that they have to deal with Jewish people here who know what they want, and they try to become citizens here in that country, so they don't make so much problems. I must say, it's sometimes it's difficult. Let's say in the hospitals there is a certain disorder, chaotic situations, because Muslim visitors don't accept visiting times or things like that. I have experienced that myself, that the nurses cannot really guarantee that there is the order they need in a hospital with these people. But that's not really a, let's say, conflict potential. That's the problems we have with them. Also, their behavior in the streets, how they drive. It's very dangerous to drive a car here in the south of Israel because of Bedouin youth racing with motorbikes and cars. Without any rules or traffic rules seem unknown to them. So that's and often in stolen cars and without a driving permission and so on. So these are the problems we have with them, that it is difficult with these people, but it's not a general problem that they dislike Israeli society or feel like it is in Europe, that they feel contempt against the. I mean, in Germany, it's like that these Muslim people disrespect the state and the government because it's weak. And Muslim people consider weakness, not a sign of goodness or Western tolerance. So if you are too tolerant, in their eyes, it's weakness. And in Israel, we are here not too tolerant. So the police is quite strong and maybe brutal sometimes when there are problems with um, Arab youth here in the streets or something. Then they use their weapons. So many Israelis have weapons, or Jewish Israelis, and this let's say radiance of strength that they like, I must say. So when you know Arab culture, they don't like weak people, and they completely misinterpret or interpret, or maybe they interpreted the right way with what the Europeans consider their tolerance and wokeness and modern, and that's not what Arab people like. So you see that it is in Israel. It's better when they have a partner who gives to understand what we want, and people have a gun at home, and when there are problems with criminality, you have to deal with strong police. So that's maybe, but not only that. Of course, there is a lot of attraction to take part, to to participate in the Israeli development that is considered very successful, and it is. So Israel, with its economic growth and rising living standard and so on, is for these Arab young people a real attraction, and they want to become Israeli people, and they behave like that, most of them. So, and this could be kept up even during the war. That's one of the most astonishing thing you could observe here during the war, that the economy was strong enough to keep all the social standards and so on during the almost 2 years of war we have now. And of course, this has also attracted the Arabs. On October 7th, you know that there was not so small number of Arab Bedouins taken hostage and killed themselves because they work in these kibbutzim and farms that have been attacked by the Hamas. So, of course, these groups are in solidarity with the state to defend Hamas. So the Arab Israelis, as we call them, the Arab members of our society, they have our citizenship and so on, and work here. They are against Hamas and Islamic terrorism.
So you are, I mean, I completely agree with you that we have to do, I mean, the assertive.
Wait a second, I have to take out some noise here. Yeah, it's a very noisy place. That's the problem
Although
uh,
you're in the desert, I
with
mean,
the
some
jets and so on. Yeah,
doesn't think of the desert as a noisy place.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
it has, yeah, it's it has been a change. We talked about this, my wife and me, today, that we thought to coming to a calm, quiet place in a landscape that is far away from all troubles and so on. And now it's the opposite that we are here in the hotspot of new political conflicts, and with a lot of noise and a lot of, I must say, pollution. The air is very polluted at the moment because of the um, debris in Gaza. We are only 40 kilometers from Gaza, and Gaza is a terrible heap of rubble of, I think, 40 million tons of rubble. And the United Nations told us that the materials they have used there for building are very poisonous. So asbestos and other things has been used by the people in Gaza to build their to mix their concrete and to build their houses, and this is now all open, and a lot of pollution. That's the real problem we have here, and noise. So, but that's the situation in a war-torn country.
It's well, one of the many paradoxes of history. But yes, I want to say, I of course I agree with you completely that an assertive civilization would have a better role, or I mean, a better chance at integrating people that comes from different cultures. But you know very well how all our paradigms have been inverted, because for example, think of the one of the most idiotic sentences of the 21st century is that all cultures are the same, so
Yeah.
there are no differences among cultures. And of course, when you have such idiotic standing points, I mean, you cannot even integrate people, and that's why you mentioned Germany. In Germany, it is now common practice for the Muslim population to go on the street and invoke a caliphate, a
Hmm.
caliphate. Like, and there is no nobody explains what that means, what that means in political terms, because I mean, technically that's a felony. It's a attempt to subvert the constituted state. But because we are, the West is not assertive anymore, even in America. You properly pointed the Trump administration, but there is a huge fight in America between the forces of I don't have the name, the rainbow forces, the morons that are now talking from all possible chairs and provosts and deans and presidents of Ivy League, and the part of the country with common sense that is assertive. If you have followed what happened just a few weeks ago in LA, in California, where people went on the street with
Hmm.
a Mexican flag in America, pretending what? You know, I'm also a naturalized American. I'm not a born American, but I would never, ever, ever, ever go on the street of the United States with a different flag than the American flag. I'm proud of my heritage, of course, but I'm an American. And these are acts of subversion that are possible on the ground of a level of idiocy that I'm afraid in Israel you do not perceive with the depth that someone can perceive in the streets of the West or in the universities of the West or in the bookstores of the West. Because the narrative war against Israel, has reached point where you can call it surreal. It is surreal. On, and I'm not just talking about the BBC. No, it's everywhere. You can go on a street of a German city and see stickers of people of a sport club supporting Palestinians. It has become surreal. And we both know that when a society enters the realm of surreal, what comes next is a lot of blood and pain and suffering. And this is the big problem. Israel is now fighting the war not just for himself, it's fighting a war of reason, of peace. Because all that Israel wants is to be left in peace. But it is clear to every single well minded person that if someone comes to you with the intent, you know, what I love about some Israeli politicians, they said that recently. If someone wants to kill you and says kill, take him seriously. And that's what they're doing. And it's correct. And we have been there. in 1963, the world was almost on the brink of the Third World War, of thermonuclear annihilation, because the Russians wanted to put some rockets, some missiles, some nuclear missiles in Cuba. Because the United States said that's an effort to destroy us. So if you want to go ahead, we will go to war. Now, this logic, and we're talking about the Kennedy administration, not a Republican administration, a Democrat administration. Although today Kennedy, compared to what has become the Democratic Party, would be, I don't know, a right wing extremist. But this is also the problem. We have a paradigm shift, but also a common sense disintegration that allows people to say impossible, crazy stuff against Israel without realizing who is the aggressor and who is defending himself.
Yeah, we have to deal in the Western societies with the phenomenon of mass psychosis and mass hysteria. I think that the pro-Palestinian atmosphere in Western European and even American cities has not really is not really connected with the real matters here. So it's kind of fashion to challenge their own government, their own societies, to express your opposition, your negative view on what the government does, and so on. So then the pro-Palestinian paroles became a kind of a shift, a kind of a symbol for that. I think that most of these people don't even know what they are demanding there. So when you tell them what Hamas rule really means, you find out they don't know about it and they don't care. So they have found let's say, a symbolic means to challenge their own societies. That's why I don't consider this such a big danger. I think this is coming in waves and going. Anyway, we have the experience in history that anti-Semitism comes and goes in waves. So we had very anti-Semitic periods, but it's going down after a time. So you have to wait for this. It's you cannot confront a stampede. So when they go into the street and make noise and so on, it's better to not to confront them, except of the police and the army who have to do that. But as a private person, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go to a campus now and discuss with these people because it's completely useless. They have no opinion, so to speak. They have a lot of feelings and so on, and they want to express it. But I think that an intellectual discussion with them is completely useless. So, what I think is more dangerous is that the European countries are not capable to integrate the Muslim minorities because they have the wrong attitude. Many of these people have left their countries because they don't like the way of life there. We should forget this, so that there are many people who would be happy when they find in Europe a real way of life with self confidence and the Western values and so on. But instead of that, they come in countries where all these things are in disregard, and so the aggressivity they show only reflects the crisis and the weakness of the Western societies. I think that the Western countries have to learn how to deal with the Muslim minorities as we do this here in Israel. I think you are right that we do it better. And all in all, it's a peaceful life here with the Arab minorities. Um, it is because the Israeli society shows its intentions. There is a strong solidarity among the Jews, mostly the inner Jewish conflicts, of course, they exist, but the Arabs don't. They are not interested in them. That's not what they want to have a good life. They want to live the Western way of life. That's what Western countries completely misunderstand. But they are the left in the West is against Western way of life themselves. So of course they cannot convince Muslim minorities to accept their life there. So that's a problem. So that's different here in Israel. The Israeli Jewish population has a very strong attitude. It's difficult to explain. So people are kind and friendly and everything, but they are strong to stand their ground here, and this is in the atmosphere. And Muslim youngsters know that they can that they have to face real troubles when they start something here. It's completely different to Paris, where they can destroy the entire center of the city, and there is nothing, obviously no police around or something. It's terrible to see those videos, what they do in European towns, and what demonstrations, also political demonstrations, are possible. I mean, there are Western laws that should it make it possible to call for the killing of Jews in Western cities, but they can do that unpunished. So there is no persecution or something. Although they know who these people are, police is present, sees them, hears the slogans, and in the end, they won't brought to court with that as they should have. Um, there are no real procedures, law procedures or something. They will be sent home after a short, in maximum is shortly being arrested for some hours or something. So there is no law enforcement, and they feel that, and they feel that they can go into the street and kill the Jews, as they do, for instance, in Germany. Hamas, Juden ins Gas, Hamas, Jews to the gas. They can call in German cities without consequences. I mean, that's the problem of the Western societies. Obviously, there are I don't know, too much cowardice also among in the justice department, also to have real law enforcement. The laws are clear, so it's not allowed in a German town to call to killing Jews, but the reality is different.
Not yes, not just I mean, first of all, it's not just the task of the state. Should not be just the task of the state to go against this horror of people calling for the death of Jews on the streets. It should be also the task of every civilized individual. It should be what is really missing
Right.
is indignation of the
Mm.
people. It
Mm.
is missing, Chaim. And not on the contrary, you see, and people like us that do a lot of activities, also written and online, we see a abhorrent raising or the head of the ancient hydra of anti-Semitism. Just that today they they say we are not anti-Semitic. we just hate Zionists. Okay, do you understand that it's like saying the same with different words? It's like I say, I don't like, there's a technical term for Apple. I say that I don't like. It's not that I don't like Apple. I don't like using the technical term for Apple. It's the same thing, and these people have a media coverage on their side that is kind of uncanny. And I remember here a book that was published in the 70s by a French intellectual, an excellent book, whose title is, I'll try to translate that in English, The Nazi Money at the Conquest of the French Press. It's an analysis that this guy made of how Nazi invested in the French press, free press, between the 40, I think 41 and 45. So to not to force them to write in their favor, but to pay them to write in
Hmm.
their favor. I think that book is extremely important to be noticed. Such an important book about history of Germany is not translated in German. I only know the French version, which now is out of, it cannot be found anymore. So my question is always, how is it possible? And why is that these people can go on the street, destroy Paris, create, you count the number of stabbings in Europe and you put together all the countries, you basically have a small war. But the media doesn't report anything about this because now this is a dark joke, but it's a true thing. Somebody wrote on a wall, sprayed on a wall in, I believe it was in Australia, I was an anti Semite before it was cool to hate the Jews.
Hmm.
I was lamenting the fact that today it has become sort of cool. And you see,
Yeah.
it's, it's a
Hmm.
dark joke, but what is it when you have in university campuses? I'm not just saying the gravity, the seriousness of the fact that you have Jewish students arrested. I published like 3 months ago a very, very important documentary on this, on the harassment of Jewish students in US campuses. How
Hmm.
many morons left comments writing, yes, but Gaza. What has Gaza? The documentary was about US American Jewish students in US campuses. What has Gaza to do with anything? What do these people, these American students that happen to be also Jews, to do with Gaza? What? They don't see how absurd, that's what I was saying before, how surreal their claims are, because they don't want to be called anti-Semites by being anti-Semites, and they show when they write the stupid comments without understanding. Also, if you try the reversal, you know what happened in Italy. Shame on them. Last month, I believe, in Naples, where a restaurant owner refused to serve a group of Jewish tourists just because they were Jewish. Or I mean, first he wanted that they read a kind of manifesto she wrote about Gaza. Total nonsense. Total nonsense from a restaurant owner in Naples.
Hmm.
And where's the where's the indignation? The opposite. Many people write in support of this anti-Semitic war. Everything has been turned upside down.
Yeah, that's really sad that the situations like that, that there is such a rise of anti-Jewish feelings and sentiments in the moment. I don't know. So we have to wait until this goes back. I have no idea how you can avoid such a wave of hysteria as it is. Obviously, I wouldn't go to such a university now. When I was a young Jewish student in the United States, I wouldn't go to Harvard or those places who are in bad reputation now among Jews. So Israeli people react, for instance, they don't go to countries at the moment where they are treated like that. There are other countries much more friendly. I just wrote an article about the habits of Israeli people to travel. Israeli people are traveling a lot, but they are well informed via social media and so on how the situation is, and via friends tell them. So you can go to countries that are very friendly to Jews. For instance, in Asia, so my grandsons went when they came back from their military service in Gaza in the war. They wanted to relax, so they didn't go to France, of course. So they went to Thailand or Vietnam or India or places where Israeli people are welcome, where a lot of Israeli people are always present. So in India, for instance, there are tens of thousands of Israeli people living, many of them for a time, and there are entire places where you find Hebrew inscriptions, and so that's you have to be flexible. So I cannot change the situation in France at the moment. I think that it's lost. So it's a weak government, ridiculous president. We cannot expect anything from them. So they are taken hostage more or less from their more and more aggressive Muslim population. Situation is very bad. The same in United Kingdom. I wouldn't go to those places at the moment. There are other countries also in Europe. You can go to Hungary, for instance. Hungary is a very friendly place. They have a lot of Jews now. It's well known among Jews that the Hungarian government, and they are always in conflict with the European Union, and Prime Minister Orban is always in trouble with his European colleagues because he goes another way. But also the Czech government or the Polish government, so other countries use that situation to attract Israelis at the moment. Greece, for instance. So people like to go to these countries and avoid. So Israeli people like to go to these countries, avoid France or in the United States universities. I mean, there are hundreds of universities. You have to go to those that are lost at the moment. I don't know what they have to do that themselves. It's not our job to care about their own inner security. They have to do that themselves in the United States. I think President Trump is doing well with sanctions against universities that go the way as Harvard did. I mean, it's a university that more and more became the humanities, I must say, out of it's completely ruled by leftist and Muslim, pro-Muslim people since years already. There had been big money coming from Qatar and Saudi Arabia. That's well known. These universities are partly are corrupt and partly bought by the by Muslim interest groups, and so is the behavior there. So I wouldn't go there. That's all I can say. And when I was a Jew in the United States, I wouldn't give a cent anymore to support these universities. I mean, many of these universities have lived on Jewish donations with billions of dollars they got from Jews, and
And you
it's
know,
sometimes it's absurd to see that such an anti-Israeli demonstration is just in front of a building where there is written the family Sonnenschein donations or the family Cohen building, and in front of it, you know that the building was built by a Jewish sponsor, and in front of it, these people. So I wouldn't give a penny anymore to those universities. And we had cases now that sponsors of, I think it was a university in California, I forgot which one, where a sponsor decided to give the several hundred millions, I think almost 300 millions of dollars. He wanted to, in his will, he changed that and gave it to the Bar Ilan University in Ramat Gan in Israel now. So the Ramat Gan University is very happy, and I think that, for instance, is a way. I mean, the American universities got a lot of Jewish money, and it's absurd. So I wouldn't give a penny anymore.
Yeah, and let's not forget Jewish scholarship, which is
Yeah, no, we should forget. Yeah,
that should
no,
be.
it's no fun at the moment. We have here in the media reports from Israeli scientists and professors who have been at American universities and come back now and say we cannot live there anymore. It's a bad place for Jews at the moment. Several well-reputed American universities. I mean, they must clear that um, in their own responsibilities. So we can only go and avoid those places.
Yeah, I even talked on the channel with Richard Landis, that was for many years at the Boston University. His father was in Harvard, and his wife also. They are two great, excellent scholars, and he taught there for 40 years. And he made Aliyah, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, because he couldn't stand anymore the climate and
Hmm.
before October 7th, because he couldn't stand any more nonsenses in campuses. But let's not forget here one key important topic while we are at it: the candidate for New York Mayor Madani.
Hmm.
That's the the most Jewish city in America risks to have in November a madman. A madman. There is no other word. A madman as mayor. This is the point where we actually are. And we are not doing much, not enough to defend ourselves, because we can
Hmm.
defend with scholarship, with knowledge, with books. But now something so simple, so elementary, like the history of Israel, because the history of Israel is simple, it's not difficult. The complications, the political complications, are another matter, are another story. But the history per se, it's key dates, and it's very simple. And we have to fight against the evidence of, for example, people saying Israeli are colonizers. Okay, wait. The temple esplanade, what is over there? What is under that? So it's like saying the Navajo are colonizers in America. It's nonsense. But we have to fight nonsense, and that brings us to the point of having, in this disarray, in this madness. Of course, the Democrats made something as usual completely insane, like putting Cuomo versus this guy. Basically, as you say in German, pass the color.
Yeah,
That's what they did. They gave two choices that they were both bad. But this guy, if I don't know if you followed, is not political, non-political program, because there is nothing political. It's just pulling the legs of people, telling them you will have rent-free apartment, you will have free food, and it works. It works.
yeah, it works. So, and it's I think it's one of the problems of democracy that this is always possible. That people like that But in the moment they are elected, so you have to accept that they are in the position. We can hope that the people in New York are not that silly, or the majority of them. But if so, then we have to. The Jews in New York have to see what they do. So if it gets uncomfortable, they're living with this guy, and the I don't know. We will see what he really does after he's elected. So whether he really does any anti-Jewish measures, or something that will become a problem for the Jews living there. So in general, we can't do anything. In general, we can't avoid having madmen in parliament. I mean, look at the German parliament, or in France, what people are sitting there. So when they are elected, it's okay. That's what we have to accept, and you can only leave the place. So when it's unbearable to live in New York, I don't know. I say this because we have done like that. So we have several times in our lives changed the place, and that's why that's my advice to everyone who cannot live anymore, who cannot stand this atmosphere American universities, or in towns or whatever. Leave the place and go to another place. I mean, that's the good thing in Western democracies. You find alternatives. You find places with a different atmosphere, and countries, and many people can move nowadays. So that's what I would advise.
Yeah, yeah, of course, but there are some concerns about on this, because it's true that madmen can always become political representative. Unfortunately, a large part of our political history is exactly that. But
Right. Yeah.
what is new, in my opinion, is that we have never seen this level of insanity in places where knowledge should be instead. The three presidents that spoke in front of the Congress 2 years ago are a stain in the history of not just of Harvard, Penn, and the MIT, are a stain in on the century, on the history of knowledge, on the deep, the low level that we have reached. So we have to actually, I believe, try to reclaim our time. And that's what you do. That's what we all try to do by writing, by trying to enlighten where it's possible. Of course, we face sometimes the barrier of hate, of ignorance, of all those bad habits that our species unfortunately has throughout the time. But it's our moral duty to keep fighting. We have no other chance, no other option. I pray, I hope. Unfortunately, I'm not a New York resident, but if I would be a New York resident, I would be on the streets picketing so that in November this catastrophe doesn't happen, because that would be one more stain on the
Hmm.
our century that has already endured a lot of madness. I have to say, we have to try to stop madness with scholarship, with
Hmm.
understanding, with good books, and that's what the Jewish people have done throughout their history. That's the greatest gift of the Jewish people to mankind is exactly that. Is an ethics, is a way of life, is scholarship. That's the main. It's
Yeah, it's the way we do it now. So we can only fight them with technology, with science. It's like that. So the Israeli military technology is Bezrat Hashem, I say in Hebrew, so with the help of God, it's much higher than those of the Iranian, although they try everything and they are supported by China. But it's we can be happy that the scholarship and scientific level and so on in the Western countries is so much higher still than in those countries who challenge us. And that's why we have to protect the universities, of course. So I agree with you. There has to be done something to make sure that the universities can keep their scientific level, because that's our weapon. We don't work with brutality and as they do. We work that way, and it was also in the war with Iran. That gives me a lot of confidence that Israel had prepared that very well, and the Israeli technology is much higher than they could even imagine. So the entire air defense of the Iranians was during the first hours made incapable, so that they could move in the air above Tehran and so on in the air without any problems. The Israeli and on the other hand, the Israeli air defense was very good. I mean, we had some, unfortunately, there had been some victims here in Israel because of malfunctions that are inevitable in a war, but they sent really thousands of rockets. And when you think that they sent thousands of ballistic rockets, I mean they fired what they had. It's not they have their stocks are depleted now. They have all that in sent against Israel. That is a little bit wasn't so much the West wasn't so much aware what pressure we had here with the really thousands of rockets coming to Israel, and 90, let's say 95% or more were shot down. So there have been some casualties, unfortunately, but it's not what they had hoped. So and also not what we had feared. So I read that the Israeli Air Force sent only old machines in the first waves against Tehran. They sent 30-year-old fighter jets because they feared that there was a strong air defense, and they calculated that maybe 10 or 20 of them would be shot down, and so didn't want to waste their good F-35. So they were kept for the. But then it turned out they had no air defense. There was nothing. There was not in. There was not only. There was not even one Israeli fighter jet shot down by the Iranian air defense. They had, in fact, they had none. So that's what we have learned here. That is important for us to be. To have high technology, high scientific level, so that the education system seems to work. So we learned a lot about Israel we didn't know. We are very critical here, and I was astonished that a lot of things have been obviously very successful, and among them, as you say, of course, scholarship, science. That's the weapons we have, and we have to make sure that they are sharp, and that we keep the places. But that's the point. For instance, in Europe, it starts with the schools. When you have a school system that is more and more undermined by Muslim influence. So, as the German elementary schools where Muslim children rule the place and bring the level, of course, of education down. And that's what we see, for instance, in Germany, that the education is going down in a really threatening way. So that hasn't happened here. We can, for God's sake, we can be happy that it didn't. So that Israeli school system and universities and are still on the high level we need to produce all the technology. I can only be. I'm full of respect with these young people. They're all younger than me, and I don't understand anything of that. But they made sure that we lived here in a certain in a feeling of, even when the Iranian rockets came, I was full of confidence that nothing terrible would happen. So it turned out my optimism was right, and that's the high degree of Israeli technology and science. It's true what you say. So that's why schools and universities have to be protected.
Always. So let's conclude and hope that the light of knowledge will protect us, will protect the world, will protect peace, and will also protect Israel. Thank you very much, Chaim, for your time.
And
And
so, yeah, it was very